In 1726, a young Benjamin Franklin created a strange little chart. It had 13 rows, 7 columns, and every single box was meant to record a failure. Not a business failure, not a political mistake, a personal one. Every night, Franklin would sit down and ask himself one uncomfortable question: where did I fail today? And he would mark it, because Franklin believed something most people today would find disturbing. He believed that discipline wasn't about motivation. It was about tracking your weaknesses with brutal honesty. Today, we admire Franklin as a genius, founding father, inventor, diplomat, philosopher. But very few people know that behind all of it was a daily ritual so strict and psychologically clever that it quietly shaped the way he thought, worked, and lived. And once you understand this ritual, you start to realize something surprising. Franklin wasn't naturally disciplined at all. He engineered it, and the method he used might be exactly what most people today are missing. Because if you look at modern life, discipline feels almost impossible. You wake up with good intentions. You promise yourself you'll be productive. You'll finally start that project, study for that exam, work out, read more. But then the day begins. Notifications appear. Your focus disappears. By the evening, you feel that familiar frustration. You tell yourself, tomorrow will be different. But tomorrow usually looks exactly the same. It feels like a motivation problem. But Franklin would have said it's something else entirely. It's a system problem. And Franklin became obsessed with systems long before modern productivity culture existed. In his 20s, he started asking himself a question that most people never ask. What if character itself could be designed? Not hoped for, not wished for, designed. Franklin believed that great lives weren't built from occasional bursts of effort. They were built from daily habits repeated with intention. So he began constructing a personal experiment. He chose 13 virtues he believed defined a disciplined life. Things like temperance, silence, order, resolution, and humility. Each virtue represented a quality he wanted to strengthen in himself. But here's where Franklin did something unusual. Instead of trying to master all 13 at once, he focused on just one virtue each week. And every night, he opened a small notebook. Inside was a grid, 7 columns for the days of the week, 13 rows for the virtues. If he failed to live up to a virtue that day, he placed a small black dot in the box. One tiny mark. That was it. At first, the page filled with dots. Franklin admitted this openly in his autobiography. He expected the chart to stay mostly clean. Instead, it looked like a battlefield. But this is where the psychology becomes fascinating. Franklin didn't punish himself for the dots. He studied them. He looked for patterns. Where did he lose control? What situations caused failure? Which virtues were hardest to maintain? Without realizing it, Franklin had invented something that modern psychologists now call self-monitoring. The simple act of tracking behavior dramatically increases the likelihood of changing it, because awareness changes everything. When you know your actions will be recorded later, your brain behaves differently. Suddenly, the day has accountability, and Franklin added one more powerful layer to the ritual. Every morning, he asked himself a question. What good shall I do this day? Then every night he asked another. What good have I done today? Those 2 questions framed the entire day. Morning created intention. Night created reflection. Between those 2 moments, life unfolded. And slowly, something remarkable happened. The dots began to disappear, not because Franklin suddenly became perfect, but because the structure of the ritual shaped his behavior. Discipline wasn't forced, it was guided. And this reveals one of the most misunderstood ideas about discipline. Most people think discipline comes from willpower. Franklin knew something different. Willpower is unreliable, but systems reshape behavior automatically. Think about the difference between saying, "I should be more disciplined," versus asking yourself one question every morning: "What good shall I do today?" The first is vague, the second creates direction. Franklin's ritual turned discipline into a daily conversation with himself, and that conversation slowly reshaped his character. But here's the twist most people miss. Franklin admitted he never actually perfected the system. In fact, he confessed something surprising later in life. Even after years of practice, he never eliminated all the dots. He never became flawless, yet the ritual still transformed him. Because the real goal was never perfection. It was awareness. Franklin realized something most people don't. Perfection is impossible, but reflection is powerful. And reflection, repeated daily, slowly changes behavior. Today, we live in a world full of productivity hacks, morning routines, time management techniques, motivational speeches. But Franklin's ritual was almost shockingly simple. Ask one meaningful question in the morning. Ask one honest question at night. Track your behavior with humility. And repeat. That's it. No complicated system, no motivational hype, just quiet self-observation. And maybe that's why it worked, because Franklin wasn't trying to impress anyone. He was trying to understand himself. And that might be the real lesson hidden in this 300-year-old ritual. Discipline doesn't begin with control. It begins with attention. The moment you start watching your habits closely, they begin to change. The moment you reflect on your actions daily, your decisions start shifting. Franklin's notebook wasn't just a productivity tool. It was a mirror, a small daily mirror that showed him who he really was. And once you see that clearly, improvement becomes almost inevitable. So tonight, before you sleep, try something Franklin did nearly 3 centuries ago. Ask yourself one simple question. What good did I do today? You might be surprised by the answer, and even more surprised by what happens tomorrow.